Well, hello, Maranatha. This is Pastor Jay. Welcome to Intelligent Faith 315. I spoke with Pastor Les, and we thought that it might be a good idea to share with you guys a couple of short video teachings in a series, and we'd like to present you guys with 5 unique features of the Christian worldview.
Hello, Pastor Jay. We're looking forward to it.
In other words, 5 aspects of Christianity that make it absolutely unique and one of a kind amongst all the 25 or so world religions.
That estimate seems a little low. Some estimates are as high as 4,000, all of which are unique in some way. What's more important is determining whether it's true or not, which is something a lot of these religions also claim to do.
Today, I'll share with you the first one in about 5 minutes or so. And so reason number 1, the first way in which Christianity is a very unique worldview, philosophy, or faith is the fact that it is verifiable.
That really is unique. Verification of any supernatural claim would be extremely impressive, but verification of the Bible could be life-changing for any of the people who are atheist or belong to those 4,000 or so other religions.
What do I mean by that? Well, in 1 Corinthians 15:17, Paul the Apostle, he tells us that if Christ be not raised, your faith is futile. In other words, that doesn't sound like a very significant statement, but as you compare that statement to all the other religions of the world, it really is pretty significant. Because what Paul is saying is that if Christianity is not verified, if the resurrection specifically is not historically verifiable, if it's not proven, if it's not shown to have actually happened in history, then the entire Christian enterprise comes crashing down.
It seems you've dug yourself a rather big hole with that statement, and it's not an easy one to get yourself out of. If you're saying that the entirety of Christianity is dependent on the verification of Jesus being resurrected in accordance with the Bible, then you are now left with the burden of proof to show beyond reasonable doubt that that event did in fact occur. Proving past events is a difficult task in almost any scenario, but proving a supernatural event which is said to have occurred over 2,000 years ago is much, much harder. Let's take an example of how we could prove a specific event in history, such as a battle. We can get documentation from both sides and multiple sources, and then check the consistencies in those documents. If there are lots of documents which are widely inconsistent, it makes it nearly impossible to decipher the truth. On the other hand, if there is only one source, it is nearly impossible to know if it was fabricated or not. However, say we have lots of consistent sources, we can then go to the proposed site of the battle and do a dig. If we find lots of artifacts such as weapons, personal items, and human remains, it becomes reasonable to assert that the battle did happen. The thing to bear in mind here is that proving the past requires lots of unbiased sources. Typically, religions reference one document, which happens to be that same document asserting the divinity of their claims, which is hardly an unbiased source. This doesn't even touch on the fact that they present this without hard evidence.
You may not think that to be a very special or unique feature of our faith, but it really is. Buddhism and Hinduism are not verifiable. They're merely philosophies about life, and individual historical facts don't matter very much. Islam doesn't encourage any kind of verification. I know dozens of Muslims who have had the verifying of their faith actually shot down or aggressively discouraged because Islam means to submit and Muslim means a submitted one. And they're told simply to believe on the basis of trusting their religious leaders, not to verify the facts for themselves.
2 Corinthians 5:7. For we walk by faith, not by sight. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him and he will make your path straight. Quoting Bible verses isn't going to prove much, but it highlights how easy it is to cherry pick lines of text to support your ideas. I'm sure you can find quotes within the Quran and other so-called divine texts, which appear to encourage reasonable inquiry, but in reality, it's not the religion which encourages any questioning of the text, but rather the cultural context that the religion is currently in. I'm sure you can find many Christians who have been discouraged to ask questions within their particular church, and it seems contradictory that a religion which emphasizes faith can also encourage inquiry and the need for verification.
Christianity, in contrast to all this, is extremely verifiable. Christianity encourages verification, but it is also able to be verified in 3 areas, many more, but I'll just highlight 3 in the time that we have. Number 1, Christianity is verifiable through the facts of history.
When you say that Christianity can be verified, it depends to what degree. For example, we can verify the Quran insofar as there are multiple historical records of Muhammad's life, not just within the Islamic world, but within Greek, Syriac, Armenian, Jewish, and Christian communities. Muhammad ran an empire for years with many battles and trade deals, leaving a wealth of evidence from numerous sources. I assume despite this you don't consider yourself converted to Islam now, as even if we can verify Muhammad's existence and the existence of places he is said to have been, it doesn't verify the religious claims based around him. I say this to clarify that even if certain parts of a story can be verified, it doesn't make the whole story true. Each part has to be verified, especially supernatural parts.
As I said before, you can verify the Christian faith through the Old Testament and the New Testament historical facts, the events, the places, the people. If these things really happened in the Old Testament or New Testament, you should be able to go to secular history and actually find corroborating reports that they did happen. And this is actually what we find.
Okay, so this is where you need to reference the specific evidence which you believe verifies this claim, which you don't do. So I will say it is worth bearing in mind there is no contemporary evidence for Jesus' life, meaning all of the documentation of Jesus' life is dated 1 or 2 generations after his death, which isn't considered strong historical evidence. It is hearsay. For more reading on this, see Richard Carrier's book on the historicity of Jesus, why we might have reason for doubt. And regarding the Old Testament, the Great Flood is claimed to have happened in the middle of the Egyptian Empire. I am pretty sure they would have noticed if there was water covering the highest mountain. Given you actually don't provide any evidence for specific events, it is hard to do much more than outline both those books aren't based on strong evidence, and leave the ball in your court.
So you can verify Christianity from the facts of history in general, but also specifically, because specific facts about the person of Jesus of Nazareth in the New Testament are incredibly verified and substantiated. For example, even atheist New Testament scholars agree with these historical facts. Jesus existed, Jesus died, the tomb was empty, and Paul and James believed that they saw appearances of the risen Christ, and also that belief in the resurrection gave birth and rise to the spread of the early church.
Let's assume that Christ's existence is generally accepted by most scholars, as you say. Even so, the nature of his life is not. There is little evidence to make assertions in regard to how he lived, or if any of the supernatural events stated in the Bible actually occurred. But even if we accept all of the assertions you have made, that he existed, that he died within the correct time frame, that the tomb was empty, and that his apostles, Paul and James, both believed he was resurrected, it doesn't prove anything supernatural or divine. The tomb could have been empty for a number of non-supernatural reasons, and even if the apostles believed he was resurrected, that doesn't mean he was. People can believe things that are false. Even if all of your claims are true, they would still not be strong evidence to support the resurrection of Christ.
So the facts of history is an amazing way in which we can verify the Christian faith. Not just the facts of history, but also the artifacts of archaeology. We can look into the artifacts that are spoken of in Scripture. We can see these artifacts actually discovered in the world. Pontius Pilate, he's known to exist from coins and pillars that bear his inscription, ancient documents that bear his name, the city of Babylon, the city of Nineveh, the historical details from Luke's Gospel and the book of Acts. Archaeology is a great way to verify the Christian faith. It's been said that the archaeologist spade has never once discovered something that has contradicted the archaeological claims of the New Testament.
As we said before, just because certain non-supernatural parts of the Bible can be verified, such as cities or people that are featured in the Bible, it doesn't serve as evidence for the story as a whole. For example, Spider-Man takes place in New York. We can verify the existence of New York, and maybe even find a man living in New York called Peter Parker. Would this be evidence for the existence of Spider-Man? No. That clearly doesn't work, because the most outrageous part of the story, a man with spider powers, remains unverified. In regard to the argument that archaeology has not contradicted the Bible, this is an argument from ignorance fallacy. If you're honestly asserting that a lack of evidence in contrary to a claim is evidence for that claim, then we can use this logic to make assertions about anything, where evidence to the contrary is scarce. For example, the Book of Mormon could be easily verified, as we could show that a man named Joseph Smith did in fact live and travel between Pennsylvania, Illinois, New York, and Ohio. However, we can't then say Joseph Smith was divinely inspired. This is obviously not an efficient method for verifying facts. There is still a burden of proof to substantiate your claims, even with the absence of contradicting evidence.
And then finally, the predictions of prophecy. The facts of history, the artifacts of archaeology, and the predictions of prophecy. In Isaiah 42 through 44, the Lord himself clearly says that if prophecy does not come true, that you can basically just throw the Bible away.
Is this God talking?
Please try this in the bin. I renounce Christianity, man. Yes, you really, you just...
In all seriousness, prophecies are generally extremely vague and predict things which are very likely to occur, such as war, famine, or some sort of natural disaster. For a prophecy to be worth anything, it needs to be very specific, including a narrow time frame, and make predictions of value which can't be influenced by human intervention. For example, if a prophecy claims that a man will perform a particular action at a specific date, there is nothing to prevent someone from reading this prophecy and consciously fulfilling it once the idea has been placed in their mind. Also, prophecy should not be open to interpretation. There should only be one way to interpret whether or not a prophecy was fulfilled. If you have to claim that a prophecy was symbolic, it usually means it was a terrible prophecy.
But he actually says that the Old Testament is the only book in the world, and the New Testament, that have the ability to predict future events in advance. And so this is actually true. You can look at the Old Testament and see what their prediction is, then look into secular history and see if it actually came to pass. And Old Testament prophecy is 100% accurate.
100% accurate. Ugh. Ezekiel 8-15 states, Egypt will be desolate from the Tower of Syene to Ethiopia, alongside a lot of other claims that don't come true. Rather than going over failed prophecies here, check out the link in the description for a list of failed prophecies from the Old Testament.
But even beyond that, messianic prophecy of Jesus, there's over 300 predictions of Messiah that have all specifically and precisely been fulfilled historically in the person of Jesus of Nazareth.
There are a number of problems with the messianic prophecies, but rather than list them all, feel free to check the link in the description or talk to any Jewish person on this topic and find out why they reject these prophecies.
And so those are 3 quick ways in which Christianity is indeed verifiable: the facts of history, the artifacts of archaeology, and the predictions of prophecy. Many more areas, but those are 3 good ones to start with. It's a great thing that we have a faith that is indeed verifiable.
I think we have outlined that at least the arguments you presented here don't verify Christianity, nor are they unique to it. The facts of history are more supportive of Muhammad than Jesus, but history doesn't support either of them being supernatural. A lack of contradicting evidence from archaeology is not evidence in favor of Christianity, and the prophecies you claim to be fulfilled don't stand up to scrutiny. So overall, you may want to reconsider what you claim to be verification. Thanks for watching, and special thanks to Andy on Twitter for requesting we break down this video. If you have a video you would like to see broken down, feel free to send us a tweet or link in the comment section. Subscribe to our channel for weekly videos. Hit the like button and share this video around to help us raise the bar of public discourse.